Hey everybody, welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. We are back for round 2 with retired Chief Wayne Norrad as part of our Legend series. Again, more great conversation. I'm blown away by the memory that these guys have because they are able to remember dates, operations, details of those operations, and the names, like first and last names of all these people. So, I want whatever they're taking, and they are probably taking Cardomax at cardomax.com, promo code One's Ready, just to get that caffeine and those juices flowing, because these guys are awake. Don't sleep on these dudes because they are sharp. But check out Cardomax, great flavors. They've got the energy intensifiers, they've got the immune boosters, they've got hydration, and it all comes in this little packet, and you could just dump into a bottle of water of your choice. I have seen Cardomax mixing it with some other drinks. I don't know, I kind of like the water, but great tasting, and if you're in a pinch, you can definitely just throw the pack straight in the mouth. But I tell you what, you better have a chaser afterwards because it gets a little spicy. But yeah, check them out, cardomax.com, promo code One's Ready, get yourself a discount. And now on to Chief Wayne Norrad for round 2. Again, phenomenal conversation. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. We are back for round 2 with Chief Wayne Norrad, retired. Chief, appreciate you joining us again. I know you're busy, and I know that, well, it's not just you. There's a lot of people that aren't necessarily comfortable with coming on a podcast. So we definitely appreciate you joining us and taking the time for a whole nother hour. So you kind of hit a lot of stuff. Obviously, over 30 years of service, like you've got a lot of stories to tell. You've been instrumental in a lot of things that were already covered in part 1, but we kind of wanted to dive in a little bit to some of these missions that you did. So let's hop right into Cambodia. And I don't really know where to go with the whole Cambodia thing. I'm just going to kind of say Cambodia and then let you riff.
It was a classified mission, and the war was over in supposedly 73. And then a couple of years later, clandestinely, we were still supporting the Cambodians, and I was stationed at Clark Air Base in the Philippines on the combat control team there, and we would go to Utapao Air Base, Thailand, and they would fly us in on C-130s, supposedly not American military, but I think after 25 or 30 years, we can figure out they were. But anyway, it was called Bird Air, owned by Mr. Bird. I actually met him quite a few years later at a Air Commando reunion. But anyway, Bird Air had crews that were in civilian clothes, and I would assume they would be going in, referred to as sheep dipped. In other words, okay, you're not in the military right now. Here's a new ID card. But in fact, they still, were military. So with us, we went in the mornings and came out at the end of the day on the last C-130, and we would leave somebody overnight, stay in the American Embassy downtown Phnom Penh to check the runway for rockets and things that had gone off during the night, so that when they landed first aircraft in the morning, would be safe, so they didn't run over debris and cut tires and have an accident incident. So that's what we did. I think we started it in early January 1975, and we did it for January, February, March, and a little bit of April. So we were in civilian clothes, no weapons. Our job was to monitor the air traffic controllers in the tower to make sure they weren't, messing up the flow and putting our American aircraft at risk. We were getting incoming aircraft actually from Saigon. They were DC Stretch 8. I remember one of the companies was World Airways, and they would fly in 2 or 3 missions a day 3 or 4 aircraft each time, and they were bringing in food and humanitarian aid, right? They also had bombs and bullets and you name
Aid.
it. So anyway, but during the day, we would get shelled from the Khmer Rouge, the enemy, and they would fire 107 rockets into the airfield where we were staged at. So we would plot where the rounds were landing and tell the embassy, and between the embassy and us, we'd make a decision on whether or not it was still safe to land aircraft. So that's what we pretty much did every day. Guy or two in the tower. And then over across the runway on the ramp, we had a sandbagged little area that we could dive under to protect ourselves when the rockets went off. That's where we did like ground control, help the aircraft get offloaded. We had some Navy guys in there that were doing most of the aerial port kind of stuff, offloading. And I think we also occasionally had U.S. Air Force loadmasters or somebody being there and help with that. So anyway, we did that January, February, March. I was a team leader on this particular mission. I was a tech sergeant at the time, and I think I had 3 or 4 other guys. Things were getting pretty hot. The Khmer Rouge had actually confiscated American 105 howitzers. So we were getting shelled by our own howitzers as well as the 107 rockets. And believe me, you know the difference between a 107 rocket and a 105 howitzer. In fact, one particular day, the Cambodians that were there helping us out, they were all in a circle eating, and they get down on their haunches and they eat their rice or whatever. And around this, actually, thank God, but it still took out a lot of them, was a 107 Chinese rocket, hit right in the middle of them. I think it ended up killing like 11 Cambodians, injured several others. I remember my teammate, Carl Casey, was trying to help and patch up some people. We had very little medical aid, but he had some gauze and things, and he was working on this one guy. He said his eyes were like staring, and he was working on him, and he was stuffing gauze, and he just couldn't stop stuffing it in. He turned him over, and the base plate of the 107 rocket fell out of his back. So he knew that he was done. So he went to another Cambodian that was hopefully savable and started working on him. Our Chief Jim Howell, decided that the best thing to do was get tourniquets made. So the landline to the embassy were wires. Chief Howell cut the wires, lost all contact with the embassy, and started using them for tourniquets. I guess they did help out, but eventually we got contact back, and I think we stopped the flow for that day. Anyway, fast forward to myself and my team. We were in there the last part of March, and the first day of April, the premier that we were supporting, he and his family got on an aircraft and left. So I'm there working in the tower that day. We got shelled pretty hard, and he and his family left, and they're shooting rockets at him and stuff as they're flying off. But after they, departed, the shelling kind of eased off. But here we are thinking to ourselves, at least I was thinking to myself, the hell are American GIs who aren't supposed to be here still here when the premier that we're supposed to be supporting
whoopsie.
So actually the next day, on the 2nd of April, my team was picked up and evacuated out of Phnom Penh back to Utapao. And we waited there. We reread the evacuation plans for getting the friendlies out of Phnom Penh, and so we got that out of the safe. We read the plans, and then I'm waiting to have the mission come off, and then I'm going to be the team leader on it, take my team back in. But no, there's some more ranking guys back at Clark that decided they had to get one more, Southeast Asia mission. So in comes Senior Master Sergeant Lanier, Master Sergeant Brabham, Tech Sergeant so-and-so, Master Sergeant Donaldson, and Tech Sergeant Wayne Norrad, Staff Sergeant Jerry Jones, Staff Sergeant Carl Casey, and whoever else I had. We were told to wait until an aircraft to take us back to the Philippines, to Clark Air Base. So I missed out on that mission, and I went back. But our guys did go in, and they helped with the evacuation. The bad part was, back in those days, the joint arena was really broken. They put the Marines in there, and the Marines didn't even know the call sign of the headquarters that, was overseeing the mission. We had been there for those 3 months, so we were talking to, the embassy. We were talking to Saigon. It was 7th Air Force was in charge. I forget the call sign off the top of my head. But anyway, it was a mess. And we actually our team of 4 guys was put in by a Jolly Green Giant 53 helicopter, rescue helicopter. In fact, turns out later on, one of my best friends, Stu Stanland, was on that mission as a PJ. So they inserted our guys. They were on the ground, and things were really going bad. And the Marines didn't realize it, but every time they were given strike reports of where the incoming was landing, the rounds kept getting closer, because they could, they were in the clear. So the Cambodians and interpreters were adjusting their guns based on what the Marines were telling them. So when it got too bad, our guys called Jolly back in, and they came back in and picked them up. And as a matter of fact, from what they tell me, just as they were lifting off and leaving, a round hit right where they had just sat down. So if they hadn't get out of there as soon as they did, a minute or two later, they were all probably would have been killed with the aircraft on fire and all that. So anyway, they got out of town, and the evacuation finally ceased. Got a lot of friendlies, but we left a lot back there too. I heard later on that a lot of the helpful Cambodians, most of them women, they were slaughtered. They downtown at the restaurants and bars and stuff, they cut their heads off and put them on the posts outside of the bars and so on. So that was tragic. Anyway, that mission finished, and then I went back to Clark, as I mentioned. Got back there, and a couple weeks later, I was TDY someplace else. I think I was in Okinawa, and they decided to pull the evacuation of Saigon, Vietnam. And my teammates from Clark went to Saigon, another 4 guys led by Master Sergeant Brabham, who happened to be on both of those missions. And Staff Sergeant J.D. Birch, Staff Sergeant Guy T., Tom Fagan, and Senior Airman John Lebo. So they all 4 went in and helped with the evacuation of Saigon. Rumors had it that the CCT team was the last ones to leave Saigon. That is false. They were the last team, or the last Americans, to leave Ton Son Nhut Air Base. From there, they went back into the embassy area and got evacuated by the Marines onto a ship. And then the Marines continued to work. So, no, they weren't the last to evacuate. They were last out of Ton Son Nhut. So anyway, that was the Cambodian deal, Saigon deal. Out of Saigon, all 4 of those guys received Silver Stars for that mission. Most of the guys out of Cambodia, we either got Bronze Stars or Bronze Stars of Valor. Some just got a commendation medal. But anyway, that was my experience with a little bit of combat back then. Got many years of training back in the States, several assignments, and back at Hurlburt Field, in the 23rd Special Tactics Squadron. I think we were called the 1723rd Combat Control Squadron at the time. And Panama, dictator General Noreaga is raising hell down there. He's injuring Americans, GIs, etc. And I think he actually killed a major from the Marine Corps. And that's when they decided to go do the mission. The 24th guys from up at Fort Bragg, they were the one team on the mission at first. And then one of the last things that happened in Panama before the actual takedown was that some Rangers from the Panamanian Ranger unit from Rio Hato had come to Noreaga's rescue, if you will, or support him. And the intel that we had, the American intel, didn't realize that they were supportive of General Noreaga. So now they had to stop the Rangers from coming up when they hit Trujillo Tucumán and the city, Panama City. So Craig Brochi was the commander of the 2-4. He and I had served together twice. I was his chief at the 1723rd, and he called down. He says, "Hey, Wayne, I'm going to give you the 23rd, 1723rd, the mission to take down Rio Hato. I'll give you guys a couple of guys to help out because you don't really have a lot of PJs, and that's your mission." So December 19th, I think it was, 1989, team here, we drove up to Fort Benning. Back in those days, we still weren't getting supported very well, so we had no airlift to get us up there to link up with the Rangers to do planning and link up with them. So at the time, Major Longoria, our DO, we didn't have a commander at that particular time. He decided, let's rent cars downtown and we'll just drive ourselves up.
I mean, why not?
A couple of vans and away we went. And we went to Benning. We did get there in time for some of the last minute briefs, but I was still discouraged with the way it was still disjointed in communications. The Air Force had planned to send in the new F-117s, I think it was, yeah. And we didn't even know that. Here we are, Air Force. We're the command and control guys that are going to be on the ground. The Rangers knew it, and I found out with my teammates at the Ranger briefing. So, yeah, and then these two F-117s are going to come in. They're going to drop bombs and, disrupt the enemy.
Like, that'd be nice to know. How about that?
Yeah. Well, what's funny about that was we're coming in at 1 o'clock in the morning. And in fact, I mentioned this into, I think it was John Carney's book, No Room for Error. I said, they just wanted to get that new aircraft, in the war or in the mission, on the mission, because all they did was wake up the Panamanians that were sleeping. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. So by the time we jumped, like 5 minutes later, they were all up. What's going on?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So they did that. I can't remember exactly how many, but we had some, I think 3 PJs from Pope, from the 2-4, 1724th. Chief Mike Lampy came down. He and I had been through combat control school, stationed in the Philippines together, really good friends. In fact, with the brotherhood as we are, my youngest son's named after Mike Lampy.
No way, really?
Yeah. That's
cool.
Yeah. So Mike came down with a couple other guys. I know Rex Ferrix was one of them. I won't go through the other names because I can't remember them all. But we were going in with the Rangers. I was attached to the 3rd of the 75th Ranger Battalion commander, Colonel Hunt. Great guy. In fact, I just saw where he passed away about a month ago. He was full colonel leading the old guard or whatever it is up at the Pentagon. What's the name of that base there where they have all the ceremonies and everything? So he was the leader of the unit that puts on all those ceremonial things. Anyway, so I was on airplane number 2 behind Colonel Hunt. I think we actually overloaded the aircraft. If I remember right, my old jump master training days, I think you're supposed to have like stick could be only 33, and I think we had 35 in each stick, so it was overloaded a little bit.
Yeah, it's combat operations, though. You got to do what you got to do.
So it's funny. I'm thinking on the way in, wow, we're flying in. There's 15 aircraft. They have anti-aircraft fire because we were told about 30 minutes out, hey, they have anti-aircraft fire and they know we're coming. So, basically, wow. So I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe the first aircraft will get through because they haven't honed in the guns yet. So they'll get number 2, the one I'm on with a couple of my buddies. But it turns out they didn't. In fact, I think it was Mike Lampy was on aircraft 10, and they did hit his aircraft. I'm sure they hit others, but I know in particular they hit, a little side story here, that aircraft because there was a young Ranger that wanted on the mission. He had just signed into Fort Benning, and he goes to Sergeant Major, and he says, hey, I know there's something going on. I've been trained. I'm a Ranger. Blah, 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 I got to go. So he said, all right, go get your kit. So they assigned him all of his gear, and he got to go, and he was the first aircraft, the first body in the door. Actually, Mike Lampy, they had very few jump masters, so Mike Lampy was actually the jump master out of that particular stick on that door. So he puts him in the door, and as they're coming over the DZ, he's getting ready to jump. He gets hit in the shoulder by an anti-aircraft round. They pull him out of the way, set him down, and he went back home. He didn't even get to go in on the mission, and he was wounded. He didn't get a Purple Heart. But anyway.
Oh, my gosh. He's just lucky he's alive.
Yeah. So we jumped in. In fact, something that's pretty cool is the first objects that were dropped into Rio Hato were our mini motorcycles, and the first people to exit the aircraft were combat controllers or PJs. They put us, we were in the front because we had to clear the runway and all that. So we had the door positions, except for like Lampy was with the other battalion commander, I believe, and myself. So that's why I was on in number 2 and back with Colonel Hunt. Incident that happened with the aircraft I was on, there's about maybe 2 or 3 guys in front of Colonel Hunt. He's, shuffling down to jump out of the aircraft, and he fell down. He, I don't know, stubbed his toe, did something, and the weight of his equipment, his rucksack, he had a big, I don't know, it was a law or something on, and he's like a turtle on his back. He couldn't get back up. And we're already at the end of the stick, so we're flying. Get the hell out of here, So finally, Colonel Hunt says, let's go. So he jumps over the guy and goes out. I jump over the guy and go out. So the rest of the stick, we all jumped out, bypassing this guy that had fallen down. Well, something that happened after I jumped, this is a combat jump. I heard later that it was actually like at about 450 feet. It's supposed to be 500, which is, the...
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So not much time. The normal combat training jump altitude is a minimum of 800. We usually jump static line at 1,000 or 1,250 or something. So this was 500 feet, but I heard the aircraft actually went a little bit lower than that. So I jump out. I'm trying to lower my equipment, and I pull my 2 lanyards, and one side hung up. So I'm looking down. In fact, I think it was my right side. I'm looking down, and I grab the lanyard, and I'm trying to pull on it to get the equipment off me, that 80 and 90 pounds of equipment, so that I can land a little bit softer under that parachute. And I hit the ground still trying to pull it. So I hit like they say, a ton of shit, bag of shit.
Well, I mean, when you jump out at that altitude, you're talking about like one swing, really, one, maybe 2 swings before you are impacting. So that is
we probably
quick.
should we probably should have left the reserves on the aircraft. They never would have impacted the ground if we had to use one. But anyway, I hit the ground, chambered my round, got my rucksack off, got rid of the parachute, and then my radio wouldn't work. I had hit so hard, I guess something happened in my radio. So I couldn't hear my team. So I started making it back, and I run into Major Longoria, and somehow we split up again. I run into some Rangers, and they were supposed to recover equipment that was dropped on the last 5 aircraft and recover, gun jeeps and all that stuff. They were young Rangers. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know where they landed. They didn't know where the equipment was. So here I am, a E9 Chief Master Sergeant, and I'm already going to be late because I landed so far out to help clear the runway or anything. So, well, I help these guys. And I was the only one that had night vision goggles on. The Air Force guys, we all had night vision goggles. So I put my night vision goggles on. I said, all right, come on. So here I am, a chief. I'm the point man and compass leader, whatever you want to call me. And anyway, I got the Rangers over, found a couple of the Jeeps, and I left them, and they obviously later on found the rest. By the time I finally made it back to Colonel Hunt in the 3rd of the 75th Tactical Operations Center, we were already landing aircraft. Lampy had given him the okay. He was the backup for giving the clearance, and the guys had cleared the runway, and we started landing aircraft. So that's what we did for the rest of the night. Unfortunately, we took some pretty devastating hits down there. For Air Force-wise, we did pretty good. We didn't have anybody wounded. We did have one of our PJs that was from the 1724th break his leg on landing, and he was evacuated with some of the Rangers that were wounded. But if I remember right, before the mission was over that day and the next day, I think we had 6 Rangers killed, several others wounded. One of the instances was basically, unfortunately, miscommunication, and we weren't controlling it. I keep saying Marines. Going back to Cambodia. Anyway,
the Rangers
called in some helicopter gunships. They were trying to take out these Panamanians that were protecting their weapon stash just a short ways off the end of the runway. And unfortunately, they vectored them right over their position. The helicopter opened fired early and killed 2 or 3 or 4 guys, Jeez. Rangers, and that was a shame. So we sent our PJs that were with us to go help patch those guys up, the ones that were wounded and not dead. And that's when we first used pararescuemen and combat controllers together, was in Panama. Back in Grenada, learned the lesson that we need our own medical support and rescue specialists, and that's when PJs were added to the complement at Pope in 17. Well, it wasn't even called 1724th yet. Yeah. So anyway, the PJs had their I forget what we call those. They weren't Humvees.
Talking about the old rats.
The rat. Yeah. Bee. Yeah. So with the rat bees and us controlling the ground, they could go rescue a Ranger that was wounded, put an IV in him or blood transfusion, whatever they did, patch him up, splints on broken bones, and come to the ramp, and we would automatically, right away stop aircraft from movement so they could go put the injury on the next departing C-130, and out they would go. So that communication, inter-team communication, intra-team, worked really well. And it kind of proves the point that putting the PJs with the controllers was a pretty good idea.
So 89 during that operation was the first time that the CCT and PJ had integrated.
Yes.
That's wild. And I mean,
combat operation. We had trained together before. When I was in the Philippines, I was a training NCO for our combat control team, and I actually worked with the PJs they helped give us classes. It's still basic medicine, basic first aid, but it was more than what we ever had. And then we would teach them, using the balloons for the winds and communications with our radios, how to set up drop zones, landing zones. And so we interacted, but we never went on a combat mission together.
Yeah, the name of the game is integration, especially these days. And you guys were doing it way back, I say way back. It was 89. I mean, it's not really that long ago, but probably for some of the folks that are listening, 89 is like, it may as well have been World War II, but go ahead.
And I might have mentioned this in my first go around. I think I did, but if not, I want to just reiterate that from that mission with 1723rd going into Rio Hato, the 1724th, and I think the Pope Conventional Squadron 22nd, 1721st at the time, they all got into Panama. But one of my guys, staff sergeant at the time, and I know you know him well, Gordy Tully, Gordy jumped in with me. We had an aircraft incident where one of the MC-130s that had landed with our four-wheeler and all that stuff and some other guys had turned onto the wrong taxiway, and his outboard engine sucked up a parachute, and he had to shut it down. So now he needs more runway. The runway was a lot longer, but it was like split in half, and we were only using the first half. So now we got to send somebody down the rest of the runway, or at least another 1,000 feet or more to make sure there's no debris there and make sure there's no enemy still there. So we sent Gordy Tully. So Gordy was going down clearing the runway, ran into some Panamanians, opposition, got into a firefight. He, shot a few rounds. They scurried off into the woods or jungle, and then it seemed like it was safe enough. So we taxied the aircraft down there. Pilot Major Skip Davenport was the AC and aircraft commander, and he took off with 3 engines. Actually, ended up getting a Distinguished Flying Cross for that. So anyway, we put in our decorations at the end of the missions, and of course, us ranking people, we got Bronze Stars because it was a combat operation for meritorious service. We weren't heroes or anything, but it disturbed me that guys like Gordy Tully made a combat jump, cleared the runway, got the aircraft off safely, is in a firefight. He gets a commendation medal. Commendation medal on your chest doesn't mean any more than, working back in the States and you're stationed someplace for a couple of years and they say, good job, here's a commendation medal.
No, you're right.
So I went to work on making a suggestion to put V devices on those medals, on the commendation medal, achievement medal. And when it finally got approved, it was after I retired, but it went back in again. It got approved by Secretary Wignall, and they had added at the Pentagon V devices to some of the flying decorations, like the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor and da-da-da. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that from that mission and me being a stubborn chief, I said, we got to take care of these guys that go in combat, and just because they're not, master sergeants or above or officers, they can't get a medal that means I've been in combat or shows I've been in combat. So anyway, that got turned down at first. Like I said, got put back in again by the guy that replaced me as the AFSOC Command Chief, Mike Reynolds, and Chief Vince Philpy down in A1. They said, hey, they're relooking decorations. How about, Wayne? Because I was still working on base as a contractor. And said, how about we put your suggestion in? I said, absolutely. The only bad part was it never got retroactive. So it was a competition, though.
Tully's still shit out of luck.
Yeah. So that's enough of that, I guess. I just want to give kudos to the rest of the team. So they did a great job there. We got the aircraft in and out. A couple of days later, we got relieved by the guys out of Pope. They took over. The 25th Infantry came in, Army-wise. We went up to Howard Air Force Base, and actually we bunked in the unit. We had a DET there at the time, Combat Control Detachment, and we bunked in their unit. But before the drops took place at Tourniquets to Cumin, we sent in a classified mission team, and they set up beacons and were there to make sure there was some navigational aids to help bring the aircraft in for the big drop with the Rangers, and later on the 82nd got to get their combat jump as well. So kudos to the 24th guys for making the combat jump up there, the guys that preceded them on that classified mission, and then the guys that actually came in and relieved us. And I got to go home right after Christmas, before New Year's. Did get to cook Christmas dinner there. One of the guys that was the NCIC of the DET, they had sent all the families home, so they pretty much all had houses to themselves. So in a 3-bedroom house, we went over there, and I collected $10 from everybody. Went to the commissary and got a turkey and a ham and all the fixings, and we had a nice Christmas dinner together there. And which, in a way, I think helped solidify the PJs and controllers together. Here we are having Christmas, just been to a combat mission together, and now we're having Christmas dinner together. So yeah, so that was a big help. And I remember when I got off the aircraft at Hurlburt, the commander, General Eggers, the first AFSOC commander, came up and said, "Hey, Chief, how's it going? How'd it go?" And I told him, and he said, "How'd the PJs do?" And I said, "Man, they did a great job. In fact, talk to Frank Medeiros here. He was on a pretty high mission, and no, they did great." So he ended up talking to the PJs as well as the controllers that got off the airplane, and everything was good.
So I gotta say, like, one is your memory, and not just yours. Like, when we talked to Chief Lampy as well, like, both of y'all's memory is incredible. I don't remember what I had. I struggle with memory. So
that's because you had too many missions, and they all kind of went together. I had one, and 15 years later, I had another one. And I could just distinguish between two missions.
Well, so that's interesting that you say that, right? So, like, as somebody who has been in the community, because I still consider you. I mean, you are 100% in the community still, because you are making impacts even now, and when you see, the kind of GWAT and then the post GWAT and that kind of stuff. Like, I know, and I'm just saying I know because I've heard it and I've been told this, not from you, but like there's a respect from an older generation that looks at what guys have done in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and stuff like that. That it's incredible what you guys are doing, but I don't think you realize how much or maybe you do, realize how much we look up to all of you and the incredible things that you guys did. I mean, just in the names that you mentioned, right? You're talking about yourself, Mike Lampy, and several of the other folks, and it's repeated names, like all the time. Oh, and then in this mission, this person and this person, and then in this mission, this person, this person. I mean, you guys are killing it.
Yeah. Let me tell you this. The Brand X guys, the guys that went into Iran on the rescue attempt, those guys are pretty well known. And that was actually the first team of guys working the counter-terrorist mission. Then they stood up the unit after that mission failed. And I happened to be in the unit that they stood up with. There was 16 controllers, 2 officers, 14 enlisted, and 5 support people. That was 21 people total. That was the beginning. So a little bit contrary to what you just said, you know how proud I am of the guys and the firefights they've been through from the global war on terror, that I just can't give them enough kudos. But at the same time, when they find out, oh, you're Chief Norrad, oh, you were in the first, counter-terrorist mission, and you are the guys that started that so that we could get where we are today. So for us that were there, the Mike Lampies, the Craig Brochies, the John Carneys, the Jeff Buckmelters, Rick Caffey, little fella, Doug Phillips, go on, we do get some accolades from the new guys when they find out, oh, you were the grandfather or the
Godfather
of combat control, pararescue, special tactics, all that stuff. So yeah, I've been patted on the back probably too many damn times. I only spent 3 years there, and then I went to the damn staff. But anyway, we do get appreciated when they find out, oh, you were one of the first. And what helped me too was I was the president of the Combat Control Association during the first part, 5 or 6 years, 7 years of GWAT. And when we started having people killed in action, we would support their families, and I'd get to meet the spouses, the sons, daughters, moms, dads, and all that. And we would try to make them feel like if they ever needed anything, not only the active duty, but the retirees, anybody that's in our association would support what we want to recommend that we support you with. And so I got to be friends with Pete and Sue Service and Wendy Argel and, Linda Crate, Casey's mom, and Fresquez, Nick and Sherry. Anyway, I got a lot of still longtime friends from the families.
Yeah.
In fact, when we were selling our house on Navarre Beach, Sue and Pete Service had left and went back to Illinois because they had moved here after Adam was killed, and they went back, and I didn't know it, but they bought a nice condo down on Okaloosa Island, and I just was trying to catch up 6 months later after they'd left and say, hey, Pete, how are you and Sue doing? This is Wayne. And, what are you doing? I told him we sold our house and said, in fact, we're looking for a place to live right now. And he said, well, I have a condo down on Okaloosa Island. He says, it's only for my family or closest friends. And I don't know if I want to call you closest friends or part of the family. You're welcome. You're welcome to stay there. Because we paid him some money, but he didn't. I mean, they were getting lots of money for that apartment. It was right on the beach, ocean view, and all that. It's a beautiful place. And anyway, we lived there for 2 or 3 months until we got our own apartment. So that's the kind of family you have if you're a special tactics person.
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. And when you're dealing with kind of the Gold Star families too, there is a certain level of bond, especially if you're, and I don't know if the acronyms changed now. It's not a FLO or a family liaison officer. It's something else now that I'm brain farting on. But when you are that family liaison officer with a Gold Star family, walking from notification, it starts at notification and it'll last the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
true.
And it is a sobering role to have. It's, if not life changing.
Was also I was part of the Special Ops Warrior Foundation for 19 years. In fact, I was the first enlisted guy on the board, and then followed by Mike Lampy. Mike would have been first, but he was still active duty, and they said, well, it might be a conflict of interest. But anyway, them knowing that I was serving as a director and getting them hooked up, if need be, with the Special Ops Warrior Foundation and taking care of their children to go to college free. That meant a lot to the ones that did have children. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So before we had you, I'm going to switch gears slightly, because if not, we'll start talking about the amazing Gold Star families, and then then emotions start running. So
yeah.
Last thing I need to do is be getting emotional on a podcast. But so I reached out to two buddies of ours actually, retired Chief Mike West and retired Mess Sergeant Phil Pimp Freeman, to ask some like, hey, what are some things I should ask? I won't, like, if I were to read the text that they sent me, one, it'd be self-incriminating. Two, you definitely don't need that stuff out there. But
I don't think Mike would treat me that bad. Phil, I just saw him the other night. We had a beer together here at the tap room. So yeah, I caught up with him. He said, "Yeah, I'm glad to see that you finally decided to go ahead and do the podcast." Said Peaches was going to put me on you if you didn't do that. And he said, "I found out that you finally had agreed." So anyway, all right.
So one of them was like, "Hey, ask about getting dragged by your parachute into a deuce and a half during during a Korean ORI."
Yeah. But it was an exercise. I'm not sure it was an operational readiness inspection. Yeah, we were on an MC-130, and we were going to put a beacon on top of this mountain. So we were dropping into a drop zone, and then and it was at night, and then we would go up the mountain and set up the beacons for beacon bombing missions to follow on. So we had our own controllers on the ground, two senior master sergeants on the ground. So I don't think they'd worked with the wind meter very well the last 15 years. They were in the office. But anyway, they dropped us in like 15, 20 knot winds, static line jump.
Ooh.
And we got offset quite far because of the altitude winds too. So what happened to me was I was coming towards the drop zone, and I said, "Oh man, I don't know if I can." There was wires on the side of the road, and I didn't know if I could go over the wires if I lowered my rucksack. I thought, well, my rucksack lowering line might hit the wires.
Yeah.
Then as I'm coming closer, I look on the other nearer side of the road. They had cut a bunch of trees and stuff, so there's a bunch of stumps sticking out of the ditch. I said, man, I don't want to land in that. So I get down where I have to make a decision. I said, okay, I'm not lowering my rucksack. Maybe I can make it over the wires. And last minute, I couldn't. So I do a left turn and take a downwind landing on the paved road. Here I'm talking 15 knot winds or so. The drive of the parachute. So I hit the road doing 25, 30 miles an hour. And so as soon as I hit, the canopy inflated again, and it started dragging me down the road. And we had our deuce and a half there that was picking up. That's a truck for those that are on the broadcast that don't know what a deuce and a half is. It's a big military truck.
It's big.
Yeah. So the parachute pulled me under the back tire of the deuce and a half. And as soon as I got stuck under there, the parachute canopy kept going, and it tangled my hands up, so I couldn't get up and release one side to get rid of the canopy and release the air and save my ass. So anyway, luckily there was guys close enough, and they came running up, and they had to pull on the parachute, finally get the cape well released and let the air out of it. And anyway, so I'm at least not going to die from no air, because the lines are actually across my neck too. But the bad part was when I got up to walk away, my left knee was like a sponge. I had torn my knee up. So needless to say, I was picked up with the ambulance there, and there was one other guy that hit. I think he landed short and hit a building or something. So the two of us, his name was Dave Burchett, he and I got taken away. to the hospital, and I got a cast put on and whatever. So that's the Korean jump story there. Yeah.
Well, that's if those win
10% VA out of that jump.
out of that one jump. Yeah, I imagine so. You blow your knee out. Yeah, that's with that wind being so high. If that thing's fully inflated, it's tough to get those cape wells out because there's so much tension on there. Yeah. So there's one more. Like I said, they sent me a couple, and I'm like, I told both of them, I was like, I don't know that I can mention that. So, but I will say, and this is one that Phil said, and I'm going to read it word for word because this is just shows the kind of person you are, at least the way he thinks of you. So Wayne, he's the kind of leader you want to work for. He's the kind of leader that if you disappoint him, you're more disappointed in yourself. There's a story of when he took a team to Bright Star in Jordan, and they had some dilapidated old barracks. The bathroom had not been cleaned in a while and had kicked up shit in the drain in the toilet. So he texted us. So there's some weird typos or whatever. But as a team leader, instead of telling airmen to get the shit out of the toilet and clean the place up, you just stuck your hand down in the toilet with. Golly, man, with no gloves and just decided to start cleaning the toilet. I know that's not a heroic job, but it's the kind of leader he is. Do you want to follow and be like him? So
that is mostly a true story. So I had gone over early on the planning for that exercise, and I thought we had quarters like the crews did, but by the time we got there, they had more crews than they expected. So we got put in the old Jordanian enlisted barracks, and it was horrible. Like you were saying in the beginning here, it was bad. They basically pooped in you squatted over a hole in the ground, not a hole, but a tube in the bathroom. So the hot water heater wasn't working. The toilets were stopped up. So I got the guys together and I said, look, this is going to be our home for the next month. So I said, first thing we do is clean this place up, get everything working, and then we'll feel a lot better about staying here. I know it's going to be crappy the whole time, but I don't want it to be this bad the whole time.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I said, the first thing we got to do is get these flies out of here and get the shit out of those holes. So I did. I reached if I remember right, I think I did put some kind of glove on.
That's
maybe
good.
Not. I don't know. But anyway, so I started pulling crap out of there, and Mike Breeden was the staff sergeant at the time. He was pretty good electronically. He figured out what was wrong with the hot water heater. And the next thing you know, the flies are gone, the toilets are clean, got hot water, and we're in the barracks and we're having a good time. What's funny about that mission was the guys that I had with me were pretty much from my unit, except we did have a couple of weather guys attached to us. One of them became a controller later, Larry Matson. But when we got there, we were supposed to do a lot of training in the field with the SF, and they decided they didn't want to take us for some reason, so we had a lot of time on our hands. So I got with the MC-130 crew, of which one of the guys was a prior enlisted controller, big jump guy, and so I got them to drop us all the time, and the C-141s to drop us too. We were practicing for what they call airlift rodeo. So we had to do jumps into the rodeo and hook up your, get your radios going and do all this stuff. So the closer you could land to the target, the quicker you could, get to end X with your radios online and all that. So we practiced that. Plus they had rucksack runs and the 3-mile run. So every day I'd lead the guys. We'd go out and do, runs with rucksacks and without rucksacks, a lot of PT. And anyway, we went back and won the damn rodeo.
Yeah, but it kind of goes to that old thing. Like you leave a place better than you found it. Yeah. Right. And why would you live in squalor when you don't have to? You improve a place and that's just what you do. you know?
In fact, Mike Breeden one time, I forget who was harassing me. There was something going on, and I don't think it was another controller or PJ. I think it was a loadmaster or somebody was trying to get me to do something, and I knew better. I wanted to do it this other way, and this guy started, giving me a hard time. And Mike Breeden jumped up there and he said, "Chief, I got this. I'll kick this guy's ass. You don't have to." He said, "If he's picking on you, he's picking on me." And so Mike jumped in there. Nothing happened. But anyway, that happened with Mike. And there was another guy too. And I remember it was a Loadmaster deal where we were trying to back the trailer onto the back of a C-130 over in Korea on this, I forget the name of those exercises. I went on several of them. But anyway, I had backed in Jeep so many times as a young guy at Pope, backing it into the slot after we got through washing them and everything. I could back it up without any problem. Well, the Loadmaster wanted me to look at him, and he was going to give me signals. I said, "I can't do that. I'll get it in there. You just go stop if I'm, going to hit something and screwing up." And the guy got belligerent with me. And one of my other guys stood up and said, "You son of a bitch, I'll kick their ass. You leave them alone." So, yeah, take up for the troops and do your part. No matter what rank you are, they'll hit. They got your back.
Oh,
so,
yeah, for sure.
Have my back.
Yeah,
Let's not forget, because I did last time. Can we switch forward to almost a year later and just hit a little bit of Desert Storm?
Let's do it.
Okay. So everybody's pretty much familiar with the name Desert Shield was the buildup of forces, and then Desert Storm was the name it was given for combat operations. So I got on the first MC-130 to leave out of Hurlburt Field as a forward advanced planner, and went into Saudi Arabia. We landed at Riyadh at first, and we thought we were going downtown and staying in hotels and all this stuff, but we got redirected, and we went up to another airport, not King Fahd. We ended up at King Fahd. Anyway, we landed at another airport, and we stayed in school rooms with the old Army, we call them Army, beds, and I don't even know if we had mattresses. But anyway, we were there for 2 days, and we were directed to go up to King Fahd International Airport, which was pretty much finished, but they hadn't opened it yet. So we went up and surveyed it and said, "Yeah, this is good to go." I mean, it was a huge airfield, a lot of ramp space, huge runway. So we were directed to go up there, and eventually, a week or so later, we climbed the tower, and no air conditioning or anything like that, no radios. So with radios on our back, we went up and started landing aircraft to bring in, the force during Desert Shield. So I was kind of like the team leader on that. We did have an officer. His name was Tony Tino, but I don't even know if he had a rating. So I had a Pope Tower air traffic control rating. So anyway, I was tower chief. Bobby Boyle was a master or senior, J.D. Birch, and we ran the airfield for a long time. In fact, 1 month, we had a higher count of aircraft landings and takeoffs than O'Hare International Airport.
Jeez.
That's pretty good for a bunch of, combat forward radio on your back controllers who
with
didn't
no
control very many airplanes. We figured it out.
Yeah, with no radar, no nothing.
Yeah, we actually had air traffic controllers, tower controllers come and support us, and it was kind of funny because we had already been working the traffic. So we tried to say, "Well, okay, it's your turn. Go ahead and get on the mic." This guy refused to get on the mic because we didn't have approach plates, and we didn't have this, and we didn't have something that he was trained on for 3 or 4 weeks and get his facility rating.
Yeah.
There ain't no facility ratings here. Get on the radio and land airplanes. We'll figure it out. And so anyway, that's kind of how it went. We eventually got relieved with regular controllers, but it was several months later. In the meantime, I actually had come back to the States. I got asked to come back. I was interviewing for the U.S. Special Ops Command Chief job. And so they pulled me back. I got to get down and interview with General Steiner. General Steiner, I think, already had his mind made up. Mike Lampe had been on a couple of missions with him as a controller on the Achille Lauro mission, and there was a hijacking mission. And so he knew Mike, and Mike was a chief at the 2-4 at the time. So anyway, I didn't get hired, but my buddy Mike did. And eventually, before the war started, we went back over, me, and we had now a new commander. We hadn't had a commander when it first started. So our new commander, Mike Brosh, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Brosh, and I, Steve Jones, Bernie Yoder, Major Mike Gallagher, our senior medical guy, a former PJ, Stu Stanlin, who's our second group chief of the 720th. Anyway, we deployed over before the shit hit the fan, if you will. When they decided to do the ground war, they sent the Marines up through Kuwait, and we actually attached a 4-man team to them with our Hummer, with radios and all that. Trying to think all the names, but Willett, Captain Willett, Steve Jones, Dwayne Stanton, the PJ, and wasn't called Casey. Anyway, one other
Carl
guy.
Casey. I haven't heard some of those names in a long time. Yeah, you Willett, your Carl Casey, like that's...
Yeah, yeah. Steve Jones and Dwayne Stanton. So, so they went up with the Marines. The Marines cleared the enemy away from the airport, all the way up to the airport, and then we had a mission to go in on some special ops helicopters, and I think I had like 6 or 8 guys with me. So we flew up there. We landed that afternoon and evening. I got the guys to clear the runway. There was all kinds of bomblets and trash and vehicle parts, you name it, all over the runway, taxiway. So we cleared that up enough so that the next morning we were supposed to land fixed-wing aircraft. So Steve Jones and I, after we spent the night there, hunkered down, since, again, I was the only one that had a facility rating that I remember. So go up to the top of the airport at Kuwait City International Airport, and we don't know if there's enemies still in the tower or not. So we did the old trick that we learned in survival school. You take the antenna off your FM radio and you do figure eights, and if you hit a wire, hopefully you're holding it loose enough in your hand that it'll fall out of your hand, but it won't trip the wire and explode. So we did that all the way up like 16, 17, 18 stories, however big. It was like the first, number one or second highest tower in the world. So anyway, Steve and I went up there. The inside of the tower was all burned out. The radios were all down. So we had radios on our back. And I was doing the local control job. Steve was my ground control guy. And the other guys were on the ramp, marshaling aircraft to parking and all that stuff. So we did that for most of the day, and it started getting dark. I said, wow, how long have I been on the radio? Because I was real busy trying to remember call signs, and, you ain't got no boards to, all that stuff. So we're trying to write notes and do all this and keep our mind in the game and make sure everything's safe. So anyway, it's getting dark. I said, what the hell time is it? I look at my watch. It was 2 p.m. What had happened was they had decided to light the oil wells on fire, and all that smoke was obscuring the sun, and it looked like it was dusk at the airport. It was so dark that I got with a it was Colonel Orell. He was our top Air Force colonel. That was with Jesse Johnson, who was the SOF, Special Ops Forces commander, former Green Beret, Jesse Johnson. So I think it was through Colonel Ben Orell decided that we were going to close the airport for traffic until some of the smoke cleared and whatever. I remember there was one C-130. This pilot kept calling me up. Request permission to land. Sorry, the airport's closed, the obscure smoke, blah, blah, blah. And this guy bugged the shit out of me. He wanted to get a combat sortie because the war wasn't over. He wanted to get his combat sortie. So he kept calling. And finally I said, okay, whatever your call sign, I forget it. The airport is closed. However, you are cleared to land at pilot's discretion. I say again, the airport is closed. You're authorized to land at pilot's discretion. He said, I guess I got to go back to Kim Clark. So he never got his combat sortie. Glad he didn't get my name. He probably would have looked me up.
Yeah.
He was pissed. So anyway, we worked there for the rest of the afternoon. So I was always proud to say that I landed the first fixed-wing aircraft at Kuwait City International Airport at the end of the war. We had sent some guys on some we sent at first one guy, Steve Jones, on a classified mission with the British small boat unit, equivalent to the our Navy SEALs, and he went on a mission with them, and they needed somebody who can call in airstrikes, and Steve had been at the 2-4, so he knew the airstrike business, so he went with them, and they liked his demeanor and skills, so they asked if they could have 3 more guys. So I assigned them 4 guys total. They went off and did some training, and then they were supposed to do another mission in country. And that's what the mission he went on, they went up just a few kilometers, not few, I'm sorry, like 25, 30 kilometers from Baghdad, and they blew up coaxial cable that shut down the communications into Baghdad. So it was pretty, important mission. Steve,
no kidding.
Steve was a quiet professional anyway. I always loved that guy, and he got along well with them. In fact, they took 2 SF guys. They didn't invite them back. One of them left a calling card there where they were blowing up stuff. The British are pretty good about
they're solid,
secret stuff and cleaning up and leaving no signs or trace that they were there. They found that card, pissed them off, and they said, okay, SF, you're done. CCT, we want some more of your guys. So I put 3 other guys, total 4. And towards the end, the reason I'm bringing this up is at the end, we're taking the embassies over. And because we had the American embassy and the British embassy was there too. And the Brits asked if I would allow our guys to go and take the British embassy with their team. And I said, sure. So we actually had guys go in and help secure the British embassy, as well as our other guys that went with the SF, Army Special Forces, and took over the American embassy. One other short story on this, a guy by the name of Gus Reinhardt that was with me on the ground, he went in town with the commander, and they got to the embassy and met the ambassador, and the ambassador had a lighter with the embassy logo on it, and he gave it to Gus because Gus was the first American to be there to help secure the embassy. And Gus died of cancer a few years later, and I was asked to do a story for the Air Commando Association Journal, and I was trying to get all that information down, and I remembered that Gus had gotten that lighter. So I'm calling Carl Casey because Carl was one of the guys that went fast roped onto the embassy. And I said, hey, Carl, I want to make sure that I get the other 3 guys' names right. And he said, yeah, and don't forget Gus. And I said, yeah. And I said, didn't the ambassador give him a lighter? He was the first guy he met after the war or at the end. And he said, yeah. He said, before Gus died, he gave me that lighter. He said, I got it right here in my desk drawer. I said, you got to be kidding me. Serious? I said, take a picture of that lighter and send it to me. and I'm going to make that part of the story. So I did. So yeah, that.
Okay,
Anyway,
so I'm going to say again, like,
yeah.
hey, it's great that we do appreciate all the accolades that you guys give kind of our generation, but hearing things like that is just, you know what I mean? Like you've got endless stories about a guy that incredible people.
A couple of kudos to some of the other missions.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we had PJs assigned to the helicopters for rescue, and one of the aircraft that was shot down, Navy Lieutenant Devon Jones was shot down, and Captain then Tommy Trask, retired as a 3-star, but Tommy Trask and his crew, with 2 of our PJs that were assigned to us on that mission, rescued him. He was one of the rescues that was successful there in Iraq. So there was that mission. When Spirit 03, our AC-130, was shot down trying to help the Marines in Kuwait, the aircraft finally was found, and it was in shallow water off from Kuwait in the water, and guys from the 1723rd with some Navy SEALs actually dove on the aircraft and got part of the remains and so on. Before the airstrikes started taking place, a day or two before, Major Mike Longoria was an Air Force Academy grad. He was our DO, Director of Operations. He was best friends with, I think he might have been his roommate at the Air Force Academy, with the F-111 commander. And the F-111 still didn't have the newest radar. So
better not be Phil Freeman calling.
So the F-111s, when they flew long distances, their radar systems would drift and so on. So they needed something closer to the border because they were flying all the way from Riyadh all the way across Saudi Arabia. And so they wanted something before they hit Baghdad. And not a lot of people know this because I don't think it was published very well. But we put guys on Army helicopters. I know John Thompson was kind of our lead guy on that. So John and a bunch of other guys, we had gotten some beacons from the SF. We already had some, but we needed more. So we made us, trade. We gave them some radios. They gave us some beacons, kind of thing. It's war. You got to do what you got to do.
You do what you got to do.
So anyway, so we put those guys on helicopters, and they landed along the Saudi-Iraq border and took the coordinates of where they put these, I think it was PPN 19 beacons. And when they ran out of those, they actually had made some big, tall radar deflectors, and they put those in a couple other spots. So they would call me at the headquarters back at King Fahd, and I would copy down the coordinates, call it into the F-111 unit planner, and he'd pass it on to the crews. So basically, when the F-111s went across the border, they got to upgrade their systems, and that's why they were a lot more effective than they probably would have been had that not have happened. So that was another part of the war that we supported. We had, our squadron was over there, but we had augmentation from 13 other units in our 1723rd Squadron. We had PJs from Alaska. We had PJs from the Guard and Reserve, from Davis-Monthan or wherever. We had a lot of support, especially from the pararescue side, because we didn't have a lot of PJs assigned to us at the time. So, we had a total of 14 units. And I was the rank and chief there at the time, so they were my guys. And we sent them off on different missions, and they all did a great job. And we didn't have any casualties from our guys doing their thing. One sad thing I will say is that I got back to the States the day before they did the dive on Spirit 03. And, and if I'd have been there, I would have been on the dive team. But then I thought about it later. Maybe it's a good thing I wasn't, because fire control officer was Captain Art Galvin. Art was a former enlisted combat controller that I put through combat control school. And if I would have dove and seen his dead body, face or whatever, I probably would have choked on the, whatever. Yeah. So it was, I was happy after that I didn't go on that mission. They got a few name tags, pieces and parts of aircraft and all that. The weather got fairly strong, so they didn't stay and do a lot of diving on that, but they did help out. I think after that they sent the Navy dive folks in there, the regular salvage people.
Doing body recovery diving is not fun, and it's creepy and sad, and it's scary. It's like when another creepy thing is when you're kind of in not pitch black water, but enough to where you can see the sunlight or lights, and then you come up to the keel of a large boat. That is also kind of creepy and daunting. I don't know why, because it's very simple, but it's a weird thing.
One other, I got to put a little comedy in here. I'm a good sense of humor guy. So when we were flying up to Kuwait to the airport from Saudi, we're on those helicopters. So we were given a second lieutenant a little bit of combat time. He was Air Force Academy grad, great guy. His name was Tom Nalepa. He's on the helicopter with me and a couple of other guys. And the rest were Army, except there was an Air Force dog handler, I think EOD kind of thing, to help us if there were, bombs and they need to be, taken care of. Anyway, so we're flying up, and we get about halfway up there, and all of a sudden it gets real stinky in the helicopter. Holy crap. So the dog handler starts beating the shit out of the dog. Stop that. And he's beating the dog in the ass and whatever. So anyway, we go up and we do the mission. We come back. And a few months later, Tom the Leopard decides he's not going to stay and he's getting out. And during his going away party, he admitted that was him letting gas. It wasn't the dog. So
that poor dog got
the beating. All right, I'll stop there. I've gone on long enough. I got to go camping today. I'm taking my great nephews camping with my wife.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. But again, real quick before we part, really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for everything that you've done for the community. Thanks, in particular, to be a little selfish. Thanks for what you've done for me, because where I'm at right now would not exist if it weren't for you. So I definitely appreciate that. And everybody else that's out there, please like, subscribe, and take in everything that Chief Norrad says, because he is, as humble as he says it, I'll just say it. He is a legend. So we're out here.
Long-winded. I've gone on for an hour this time, an hour last time.
You're all right. No, we'll take it. All right, everybody, have a good one.